The sun was just beginning to rise over the city skyline, casting a warm golden glow on the streets below. Marcus Thompson adjusted his tie in the mirror of his modest apartment before heading out. Today was an important day, the kind he had dreamed about for years. He was finally ready to take the next big step toward realizing his lifelong dream, opening a community center that would offer free tutoring, job training, and mentorship programs for underprivileged youth. All he needed now was the funding. Marcus grabbed his neatly organized folder filled with business plans, financial projections, and letters of support from local leaders who believed in his vision. With a deep breath, he stepped outside into the crisp morning air. The bank wasn't far from his apartment, but every step felt heavier than the last. This wasn't just another loan application. It was everything he had worked so hard for. When Marcus arrived at First National Bank, the building loomed large and imposing, its glass doors reflecting the early sunlight. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with activity, tellers assisting customers, phones ringing, and people waiting patiently in line. Marcus approached the reception desk and asked to speak with Mr. Harrison, the bank manager, as per their scheduled appointment. "Mr. Harrison will see you shortly," the receptionist said. With a polite smile gesturing toward the seating area, Marcus nodded and took a seat, clutching his folder tightly. His heart raced as he rehearsed what he planned to say. He knew how much this meeting meant, not only for himself, but also for the countless families who could benefit from his project. Finally, a tall man in a sharply tailored suit emerged from behind the heavy wooden door of the manager's office. "Mr. Thompson," he called out, his tone clipped and formal. Marcus stood up quickly, extending his hand with a confident smile. But as their hands met, something shifted in Mr. Harrison's expression, a flicker of disdain that made Marcus uneasy. "Come in," Mr. Harrison said curtly, turning back toward his office without waiting for Marcus to follow. The room was sleek and impersonal, dominated by a large mahogany desk covered in papers. Marcus sat down across from the manager, placing his folder carefully on the edge of the desk. "I've been working on this idea for years," Marcus began, his voice steady despite the nerves bubbling beneath the surface. "It's not just a business, it's a mission. I want to give kids in underserved neighborhoods opportunities they might not otherwise have." Mr. Harrison leaned back in his chair, studying Marcus with a cold detachment. For a moment, there was silence. Then, almost imperceptibly, the corners of the manager's mouth twitched into a smirk. "I see," he said slowly, his tone laced with condescension. "And what makes you think someone like you is qualified to run such an ambitious project?" The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. "Someone like you." The implication hung heavy in the air, unspoken yet unmistakable. Marcus clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay composed. He reminded himself why he was here. For the children, for the community, for all the lives he hoped to change. "I've spent my entire career preparing for this," Marcus replied firmly, sliding the folder across the desk. "Everything you need to know is right here. My qualifications, my plan, my commitment, it's all documented." But Mr. Harrison barely glanced at the folder. Instead, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "You'll forgive me if I'm skeptical," he said, his voice dripping with thinly veiled contempt. "People like you tend to get carried away with grand ideas. Realistically, do you think anyone would trust you with this kind of money?" Marcus felt anger simmering inside him, but he refused to let it show. He had faced obstacles before, and he wasn't about to let one dismissive man derail his dreams. Still, the weight of the moment pressed down on him. Was this really happening? Could all his hard work be dismissed so easily? As the meeting dragged on, Marcus realized that no matter how prepared or passionate he was, prejudice was a wall he hadn't anticipated needing to climb. When the manager finally dismissed him with a curt nod, Marcus walked out of the bank feeling defeated, but not broken. As he stepped onto the sidewalk, the city around him seemed louder, more chaotic than before. One thought echoed in his mind. This isn't over. Marcus walked out of the bank, his shoulders heavy with frustration. The bright morning sun that had once seemed hopeful now felt harsh and unforgiving, glaring down on him as if mocking his failure. He clutched the folder tightly in his hand, its edges crumpled from his grip. Each step he took away from the bank carried a weight he couldn't shake, the sting of Mr. Harrison's words still lingering in his mind. As Marcus made his way through the crowded streets, snippets of conversations around him faded into background noise. His thoughts were consumed by anger, humiliation, and doubt. People like you. Those 3 words echoed endlessly, cutting deeper than any insult he'd ever faced. It wasn't just about being rejected, it was about being dismissed entirely, reduced to nothing more than a stereotype in someone else's eyes. But amidst the storm of emotions swirling inside him, something else began to take shape. Determination. Marcus had always been a fighter. Growing up in a neighborhood where opportunities were scarce, he'd learned early on that giving up was never an option. Every setback only fueled his resolve to push harder, work smarter, and prove the doubters wrong. This time would be no different. By the time Marcus reached a small park near his apartment, he slowed his pace. The green space offered a brief escape from the chaos of the city. He sat down on a bench beneath a towering oak tree, placing the folder beside him. For a moment he simply stared at it, letting the silence settle over him. Then slowly, he opened it again, flipping through the pages filled with painstakingly detailed plans and calculations. He thought about all the late nights he'd spent drafting this proposal. He remembered the countless hours volunteering at local shelters, mentoring kids who reminded him so much of his younger self. These weren't just numbers on paper. They represented lives waiting to be changed. And no amount of prejudice or disrespect could diminish their value. A soft breeze rustled the leaves above him, bringing a sense of calm. Marcus closed the folder and leaned back against the bench, allowing himself to breathe deeply for the first time since leaving the bank. As he did, a memory surfaced. A lesson his grandmother used to teach him when things got tough. When they try to knock you down, stand taller. Show them what you're made of. The words ignited a spark within him. Marcus realized that walking away defeated wasn't an option, not after everything he'd sacrificed to get here. If Mr. Harrison wanted to play games, then Marcus would rise to the challenge. But revenge wouldn't come in the form of bitterness or hatred. No, Marcus decided it would be far sweeter than that. He would use this moment to prove not only to Mr. Harrison but also to himself that nothing, not even racism, could stand in the way of his dreams. With renewed energy, Marcus pulled out his phone and started making calls. First, he reached out to Ms. Carter, a retired school principal who had written one of the recommendation letters for his proposal. Her voice was warm and encouraging as she listened to Marcus recount what had happened at the bank. "You can't let people like him win," she said firmly. "They thrive on tearing others down. Don't give them that power." Her words reinforced what Marcus already knew. Next, he called Jamal, a childhood friend who now worked as a journalist. After explaining the situation, Marcus asked if Jamal might consider writing an article about his project. "It's not just about me," Marcus explained. "If we shine a light on this, maybe we can inspire other people facing similar challenges." Jamal agreed immediately, promising to meet up later that evening to discuss details. By the time Marcus hung up, a plan was beginning to form in his mind. He wouldn't confront Mr. Harrison directly, at least not yet. Instead, he would turn this humiliating experience into an opportunity to showcase his resilience and vision. That night, as Marcus sat at his kitchen table reviewing his proposal once more, he allowed himself a small smile. Tomorrow would be a new day, and this time, he wouldn't walk into the bank unprepared. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: Marcus Thompson wasn't going to back down without a fight. The next morning, Marcus woke up before sunrise, his mind buzzing with ideas. He had spent the entire night refining his strategy, determined to ensure that this second encounter with Mr. Harrison would be nothing like the first. This time he wasn't walking into the bank as just another hopeful entrepreneur. He was going in prepared, armed not only with his proposal, but also with allies who believed in him and the power of public attention. After a quick breakfast, Marcus gathered everything he needed: copies of his business plan, letters of recommendation, and most importantly, a USB drive containing a video testimonial from Ms. Carter. In the heartfelt clip, she spoke passionately about Marcus's dedication to helping underprivileged youth and how his community center could transform lives. It was personal, powerful, and impossible to ignore. Before heading to the bank, Marcus stopped by Jamal's office. The journalist greeted him warmly, holding a printed draft of the article they had worked on together late into the night. Titled, "Dreams Deferred: One Man's Fight Against Prejudice," the piece highlighted Marcus's journey, his vision for the community center, and the humiliating treatment he endured at the hands of Mr. Harrison. While Jamal hadn't published it yet, he assured Marcus that it would go live later that day, just in case things didn't go as planned at the bank. "This isn't about revenge," Jamal reminded him, sensing the tension in Marcus's demeanor. "It's about justice. Let your work speak for itself." Marcus nodded, feeling a mix of nerves and determination. "You're right," he said firmly. "I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing it for everyone who deserves a fair shot." With that, Marcus left Jamal's office and headed straight to First National Bank. As he approached the building, he noticed a small group of people gathered outside: friends, mentors, and even a few local activists who had heard about his story through word of mouth. They held signs reading "Support local dreams and equal opportunities for all." Their presence gave Marcus an unexpected boost of confidence. He realized he wasn't alone in this fight. He had a whole community standing behind him. Inside the bank, the atmosphere was much the same as the previous day: busy and impersonal. But today, Marcus carried himself differently. His posture was upright, his steps deliberate. When he reached the reception desk, he asked politely to see Mr. Harrison again. The receptionist hesitated briefly, likely surprised to see him back so soon, but eventually nodded and paged the manager. When Mr. Harrison appeared, his expression shifted from mild curiosity to thinly veiled annoyance. "Mr. Thompson," said, his tone clipped, "what brings you here again?" "I've come to resubmit my application," Marcus replied calmly, stepping forward, "and this time, I brought reinforcements." Without waiting for an invitation, Marcus entered the manager's office, followed by two individuals, Ms. Carter and Jamal. Mr. Harrison's eyes widened slightly at the sight of them, clearly caught off guard. Before he could protest, Marcus placed the folder and the USB drive on the desk. "I want you to take another look at my proposal," Marcus continued, his voice steady and commanding. "But more importantly, I want you to understand what this project means, not just to me, but to the community I'm trying to serve." Ms. Carter stepped forward then, her presence radiating authority and wisdom. She introduced herself and explained her role in supporting Marcus's initiative. "This young man has poured his heart and soul into creating something truly remarkable," she said, her voice firm yet kind. "To dismiss him without proper consideration is not only unfair, it's irresponsible." Jamal added his perspective as well, emphasizing the importance of transparency and accountability in institutions like banks. "The public cares deeply about stories like this," he said pointedly, glancing at Mr. Harrison. "They deserve to know how decisions are made, and why." For the first time, Mr. Harrison looked uneasy. His usual air of superiority faltered as he glanced between Marcus, Ms. Carter, and Jamal. Sensing his discomfort, Marcus leaned forward slightly, his gaze unwavering. "If you still choose to reject my application after reviewing everything," Marcus said quietly but firmly, "then fine. But know this, the world will be watching, and silence won't protect you anymore." As Marcus stood there, he felt a surge of pride, not because he had intimidated Mr. Harrison, but because he had taken control of the narrative. Whatever happened next, he knew he had already won half the battle. The tension in Mr. Harrison's office was palpable, like a storm brewing just beneath the surface. Marcus stood tall, his eyes locked onto the bank manager, who now seemed less composed than he had been the day before. Ms. Carter and Jamal flanked him, their presence adding weight to every word Marcus spoke. For the first time it felt as though the power dynamic had shifted. Marcus wasn't the one on trial anymore. Mr. Harrison was. Mr. Harrison hesitated, his fingers drumming nervously on the desk. He glanced at the folder and USB drive, then back at the three individuals staring expectantly at him. Finally, with an exaggerated sigh, he reached for the folder and opened it. His movements were stiff, almost reluctant, as if he hoped this would all go away if he ignored it long enough. "This is your revised proposal?" Mr. Harrison asked, flipping through the pages without really looking at them. "It seems ambitious." "It's not revised," Marcus corrected him calmly. "It's the same proposal I presented yesterday, the one you dismissed without even reading. But today, I've brought voices that matter, people who can vouch for my character and the impact of this project." Ms. Carter stepped forward again, her tone gentle but firm. "Mr. Harrison, you have a responsibility to evaluate loan applications based on merit, not personal bias. If you refuse to do so, there will be consequences, not just for Marcus, but for this institution." Jamal nodded in agreement. "Public trust is everything for a bank. If people see that you're turning away qualified applicants because of prejudice, they'll lose faith in your leadership, and in this bank." Mr. Harrison's face reddened slightly, a mixture of anger and embarrassment flashing across his features. He leaned back in his chair, attempting to regain some semblance of control. "I assure you I operate within the bounds of professionalism," he said defensively. "But lending decisions aren't made lightly. There are protocols to follow." "Then, follow them," Marcus interjected, his voice steady and unyielding. "Review my application thoroughly. Look at the financials, the letters of recommendation, and the testimonials. If, after doing your due diligence, you still find valid reasons to reject it, I'll accept that. But don't hide behind excuses or prejudice." For a moment, no one spoke. The room fell silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Mr. Harrison stared at Marcus, clearly struggling to process the situation. This wasn't how things usually went in his office. Typically, he held all the cards. He decided who got loans and who didn't, often using vague criteria that favored those he deemed worthy. But today, Marcus had turned the tables, forcing him to confront uncomfortable truths. Finally, Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. "Very well," he muttered, picking up the USB drive. "I'll review everything you've provided, but I make no promises." "That's all I ask," Marcus replied, allowing himself a small, satisfied smile. "Fair consideration, that's all anyone deserves." With that, the meeting ended. As Marcus, Ms. Carter, and Jamal left the office, they exchanged hopeful glances. While nothing was guaranteed yet, they knew they had planted seeds of doubt in Mr. Harrison's mind. The pressure was on him now. Outside the bank, the small group of supporters cheered when they saw Marcus emerge. Someone handed him a cup of coffee while another patted him on the back. "You did great," one of them said warmly. "Whatever happens next, we're with you." Marcus felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. These people weren't just supporting his dream. They were standing up against injustice alongside him. It reminded him why he had started this journey in the first place, to build a better future for everyone. Later that evening, Marcus sat at home, replaying the day's events in his mind. He knew Mr. Harrison might still try to deny him the loan, but he also knew he had done everything in his power to fight back. And if worse came to worst, Jamal's article would ensure the truth came out. As he scrolled through messages of encouragement on his phone, Marcus allowed himself a rare moment of optimism. No matter what happened tomorrow, he had already proven something important, not just to Mr. Harrison but to himself. He was stronger than any obstacle, and his dream was worth fighting for. The next morning, Marcus woke up to a notification on his phone, a news alert. Jamal's article, "Dreams Deferred: One Man's Fight Against Prejudice," had gone live early that day. By the time Marcus finished reading it, his social media feeds were already flooded with reactions. Comments poured in from friends, strangers, and community leaders alike, all rallying behind him. Some praised his resilience, while others condemned the systemic biases he was fighting against. The hashtag firing support Marcus Thompson began trending locally, sparking conversations about inequality and fairness in lending practices. As Marcus scrolled through the posts, he couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and apprehension. On one hand, the overwhelming support gave him strength. On the other, he knew this level of attention put immense pressure on Mr. Harrison, and possibly the entire bank. Would they respond with accountability, or would they dig their heels in further? Later that afternoon, Marcus received an unexpected call from Ms. Anderson, the regional director of First National Bank. Her voice was calm but professional as she introduced herself. "Mr. Thompson, I've been following the developments regarding your loan application," she said. "I'd like to meet with you tomorrow morning at our headquarters to discuss this matter personally." Marcus froze for a moment, unsure what to make of the invitation. Was this a genuine attempt to address the issue or simply damage control? Either way, he agreed to the meeting. After hanging up, he called Jamal and Ms. Carter to share the update. Both urged caution but encouraged him to seize the opportunity. "They're feeling the heat now," Jamal said confidently. "This is your chance to take the high ground." The following day, Marcus arrived at the sleek corporate office of First National Bank's regional headquarters. Unlike the branch where he'd faced Mr. Harrison, this building exuded authority. Rows of polished desks, employees typing furiously on computers, and glass walls etched with motivational quotes. A receptionist escorted him to a conference room where Ms. Anderson awaited, flanked by two senior executives. Ms. Anderson greeted him warmly, shaking his hand firmly. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Thompson," she began. "Let me start by saying, we take these allegations very seriously. Your story has sparked important discussions within our organization." Marcus nodded, keeping his expression neutral. "I appreciate that. All I've ever wanted is fair consideration for my proposal." She gestured toward the folder and USB drive sitting neatly on the table between them. "We've reviewed your materials thoroughly, including the testimonial from Ms. Carter, and I must say your vision is impressive. It's clear you're deeply committed to making a difference in your community." One of the executives chimed. "That said, lending decisions require more than passion. They involve risk assessments, credit evaluations, and adherence to policy. We need to ensure we're acting responsibly." Marcus leaned forward slightly, his tone respectful but firm. "I understand the importance of due diligence, but too often policies are used as shields to justify discrimination. My financial history is solid. My plan is viable, and my character speaks for itself. If there are legitimate concerns about my application, address them openly. Don't hide behind vague excuses." Ms. Anderson exchanged glances with her colleagues before responding. "You're absolutely right. Transparency is key. That's why we're reevaluating not only your case, but also our internal processes to prevent similar situations in the future." For the first time since entering the room, Marcus allowed himself a flicker of hope. While nothing concrete had been promised yet, the tone of the conversation felt different, more collaborative, less defensive. It was a step in the right direction. After the meeting ended, Marcus stepped outside into the crisp autumn air. As he walked back to his car, he noticed several reporters waiting near the entrance, microphones in hand. Word of his visit had spread quickly. "How does it feel to stand up to injustice?" one reporter asked. Marcus paused, taking a deep breath. "It feels empowering, not just for me, but for everyone who believes in equality and fairness. This isn't just my fight anymore, it's ours." With those words, Marcus realized something profound. His battle wasn't just about securing a loan. It was about igniting change, one ripple at a time. The days following Marcus's meeting with Ms. Anderson were a whirlwind of activity. News outlets continued to cover his story, amplifying the conversation about systemic bias in financial institutions. Social media buzzed with hashtags like "Fair Lending for All" and "Justice for Marcus," drawing attention not only to his case but also to similar experiences shared by others across the country. People began sharing their own stories of discrimination, creating an outpouring of solidarity that Marcus hadn't anticipated. At first, Marcus felt overwhelmed by the sudden spotlight. He wasn't used to being at the center of such widespread attention. But as messages of encouragement poured in, from strangers, local leaders, and even national figures, he realized he wasn't alone in this fight. This was bigger than him now. It was a movement. One evening, Jamal invited Marcus to join a panel discussion hosted by a prominent community advocacy group. The event, titled Breaking Barriers, Addressing Bias in Banking, brought together activists, academics, and business leaders to discuss ways to create more equitable systems. For Marcus, it was both nerve-wracking and empowering to sit alongside individuals who had dedicated their lives to fighting for justice. During the discussion, Marcus spoke candidly about his experience with Mr. Harrison and the emotional toll it had taken. "It's not just about one bad interaction," he explained. "It's about the message it sends, that some people are less deserving based on prejudice rather than merit. That's why we need accountability, not just apologies." His words resonated deeply with the audience, many of whom nodded in agreement or snapped photos of his remarks. One activist praised Marcus for turning a personal setback into a catalyst for change. "You're showing us what courage looks like," she said. "And you're reminding everyone that collective action can challenge even the most entrenched systems." Meanwhile, First National Bank found itself under increasing scrutiny. Customers began questioning the bank's practices, while shareholders demanded transparency. Protesters gathered outside several branches, holding signs that read, "Stop discrimination now," and "Fairness starts here." The pressure mounted until the bank issued a public statement promising reforms to ensure unbiased decision-making moving forward. Despite these developments, Marcus remained cautious. Promises were one thing, actions were another. He knew the real test would come when the bank announced its final decision on his loan application. That moment arrived sooner than expected. A week after the panel discussion, Marcus received a call from Ms. Anderson. Her tone was formal yet warm as she delivered the news. "After a thorough review of your proposal, and considering the broader context, we've decided to approve your loan application. We believe in the potential of your project and are committed to supporting initiatives that uplift communities." Marcus let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Relief washed over him, followed quickly by gratitude for his supporters, for his own perseverance, and for the opportunity to move forward. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice thick with emotion. "This means everything." But the victory wasn't just his. It belonged to everyone who had stood by him, spoken out, and refused to stay silent. When Marcus shared the news publicly, the response was overwhelming. Supporters celebrated not only his success, but also the hope it represented, that standing together could bring about meaningful change. As Marcus prepared to break ground on his community center, he reflected on how far he'd come. What started as a humiliating encounter had transformed into something far greater, a testament to resilience, unity, and the power of believing in a better future. And though challenges undoubtedly lay ahead, Marcus knew he wouldn't face them alone. Months later, Marcus stood on the steps of his newly opened community center, gazing out at a sea of smiling faces. The once empty building he had dreamed about for years was now alive with energy. Children laughing as they played basketball in the gymnasium, teenagers huddled around computers learning coding skills, and adults attending workshops designed to help them secure better jobs. It was everything Marcus had envisioned and more. The journey to get here hadn't been easy. From the humiliating encounter with Mr. Harrison to the countless sleepless nights spent fighting for fairness, every step had tested his resolve. But through it all, Marcus had learned something invaluable. True strength wasn't about standing alone. It was about leaning on others and lifting them up in return. His victory wasn't just personal, it was collective. As he addressed the crowd gathered for the grand opening ceremony, Marcus felt a deep sense of gratitude. "This is more than just a building," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "It's proof that when we come together, we can overcome even the toughest obstacles. This center belongs to all of you, to the kids who will grow up here, to the families who believe in second chances, and to everyone who refused to let injustice win. The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing off the walls of the brightly lit space. Among the attendees were Ms. Carter, Jamal, and many of the supporters who had rallied behind Marcus during his battle with the bank. Even some employees from First National Bank had shown up, including Ms. Anderson, who approached Marcus after his speech. As he locked up the center that night, Marcus paused to glance at the sign above the entrance. Thompson Community Center, building futures, changing lives. He smiled softly, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities, new struggles, and new victories. But one thing was certain. Marcus Thompson had proven that no obstacle was insurmountable, not when you chose to. Rise above it. And so, with hope in his heart and dreams still burning bright, Marcus walked away, ready to embrace whatever came next.